And we're here with Cowboy Up with Tex. You know, sometimes I have people talk about or ask me, what do you mean by to cowboy up? Well, to cowboy up means to do what is right no matter what. Essentially, it means to have courage. People need to stand up for what's right no matter what. They need to have the courage to stand up and do what's right regardless of the consequences. Well, Dr. Ben Carson, who's currently running for president, came out with a very interesting little tidbit the other day that I really liked. He said, courage is one of the things that is sorely lacking these days in our society. And I think that's one of the things that's put us behind the 8 ball, because people are afraid. They're afraid that someone's going to call them a name or give them an IRS audit or create a problem for their family. And yet when you stop and think about all the things that people went through before we were here in order to give us our rights, think about that kind of courage. Dr. Carson went on to ask his audience to recall American history. Think about World War II, the Nazis, the Axis powers. They were winning. And yet think about D-Day, when our soldiers invaded those beaches at Normandy and being mowed down by machine gun fire, 100 men lying on the beach, then 1,000 men lying on the beach. But did they turn back? Were they afraid? Yes, they were afraid, but they did not turn back. They stepped over the bodies of their dead comrades, knowing in many cases they would never see their loved ones or their homeland again. Why did they do it? They did it for you and for me, so that we could be free, so that we could live in prosperity. And now the question is, do we have the courage to stand up for what we believe in? Because, see, today in America, people have become frightened to stand up for what they actually believe in. We are in the process of giving away all of our values and principles for the sake of political correctness. And this will destroy the quality of life for those who are coming behind us. I'm telling you, I'm not going to sit down and shut up. And I hope that you won't either. This is too wonderful of a country for us to so easily relinquish it. And I totally agree with Dr. Carson in that statement. We have people left and right in this country telling us that we have to accept this or we have to accept that. You know, people, oh, well, we have to let them find themselves. We have to let them be what they want to be, no matter the cost to our country. Well, if it's no matter the cost to our country, we won't have a country. This country will not be here once they're finished with it. Of course, the problem is that a lot of them, that is their actual aim. I mean, Obama did promise to fundamentally change this country. Most people tend to forget, though, that he didn't specify what he was going to turn it into. And we need to stand up while we can. We need to have the courage to do what we need to do while we can. And I'm not necessarily talking about putting our lives on the line like they did at D-Day, where they literally were putting their lives on the lines. But there are things that we as citizens can do. There are things that we as Tennesseans can do to help our country out. One of the things that's going on right now is that thank goodness John Boehner has resigned, and he's going to be replaced. The problem is do we get somebody like Boehner, or do we get somebody that's actually going to do something? Are we going to get somebody that also has the courage to do what needs to be done? Boehner obviously didn't have the courage to do what he said he would do. He promised, just like Mitch McConnell promised, you give us the House, you give us the Senate, we will take on Obama. They got what they asked for. Did they have the courage to go through with what they said? No, they didn't. Do we need somebody else that's going to be just as cowardly as they were? Well, only if we don't do anything. Only if we keep our comments to ourselves. The House will soon be voting on Boehner's replacement and for others in House leadership. I mean, it's not just him. He steps out, somebody's going to step into his position, then somebody's going to step into their position. It's a cascade effect. There's the possibility of having a complete leadership change when Boehner leaves. And it's up to us to make our wishes known. These people are called our representatives because they're supposed to represent us. How can they represent us if we don't tell them what we want? And they're supposed to represent our country. And we need new representatives and leadership of those representatives who will honor their oath and listen to their constituents. Now, there's a number of different people that are being considered. Right now, the front runner is Kevin McCarthy from California, who is, to be blunt, a rhino. He's just a Boehner 2.0. He's not going to stand up to anybody. He's not going to change anything. He's still going to kowtow to the Democrats just like Boehner has. He's going to give in to people like Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, just like Boehner has. Well, now he is in California, so there's not a whole lot we can do about him. But if enough conservative Republicans get behind somebody else and make our wishes known, have the courage to make our wishes known, perhaps we can get somebody that will make a difference, somebody that has a chance of helping this country on the path back to the path up. These are some of the people that have a chance that are actually good, as opposed to Kevin McCarthy. You've got Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio. You've got Representative Jeb Hensarling of Texas. He's been frequently mentioned for the speakership. Mark Meadows of North Carolina. He's actually the one that led to this current situation because he's the one that in July introduced a resolution to vacate the chair that forced the showdown after the August recess that led to Boehner stepping down. Mark Meadows, fellow Southerner, he is from North Carolina, but he would be a good choice. You've got other people like Louis Gohmert of Texas, who had tried something similar back in January, kind of got the ball rolling. Boehner came out and was punishing several of these people, especially like Louis Gohmert, by taking different seats away from him, different positions in the government, as punishment. But who's gone and who's still there? You've got Representative Daniel Webster of Florida. He also challenged Boehner for the speakership in January and received a significant number of votes. I think it was about like 27. You've got a number of different people that are available. But the problem is that our representative needs to hear from you and me and everybody else in this area. Now, who are some of our representatives that we need to contact? Well, of course, you've got like Scott Desjardins. You've got Chuck Fleischman. Those are the two that are most likely to be this listening area's representatives. And if you want to get a hold of them and tell them that we need a strong conservative to replace Boehner, somebody that is not Kevin McCarthy, we need to do that sooner rather than later. And you can do that very easily. All it takes is a phone call. All you have to do is dial 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol switchboard, 202-224-3121. Not that hard a number. Just call that number. Tell them where you live and you want to speak to your representative, and they will know exactly who to send you to. Now, are you going to actually talk to Scott Desjardins? Probably not. Are you going to talk to Chuck Fleischman? Probably not. But they do keep track of who calls and their comments. They have aides that make these lists. And if they come in and say, you know, today we had 30 people call that said this, they pay attention to stuff like that. You know, and it's kind of funny. It doesn't take a whole lot of people to sway government officials, because they know that if there's 1,000 people that believe something, there might only be one or two of them that actually have the courage to stand up and state what the rest of them are thinking. So when they get 5 or 6 phone calls about something, in their minds, that means there might be 5,000 or 6,000 voters out there that those people are representing. Be one of those 5 or 6. Be one of those 50 or 100 that actually call, that have the courage to do something good for this country. Call 202-224-3121 and tell them we need a strong conservative, somebody that's going to do what they say and not kowtow to the liberals in our government. And of course, you can always, look online or look in a phone book, find their home district offices. Call them. Do it the old-fashioned way. Write them a letter. Stop by their offices. That's what I do a lot of times. I live right here in Chattanooga, so all I have to do is just go downtown to the U.S. government building and go in, and I just walk into their office and say, hey, this is what I think. This is who I am. They know me in Chuck Fleischman's office. Because time and time again, the House leadership has betrayed us, the American people, by siding with Obama and the Democrats while cooperating with people like Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, and Mitch McConnell's been right there in that capitulation. Unless we get markedly better leadership in the House and in the Senate, Obama will continue to dismantle our country when all he's getting is token resistance from Republicans. We need a real leader, not a doormat. We need better subordinate leaders, not part of the gang, not part of the good old boy network, who in the end result betray us all. There are many decent members of Congress out there. We need them to step up. But for them to step up, we have to step up first. If anything is ever going to change in Washington, you need to start being unremitting in your demands for accountability and responsiveness from our government leaders. And we need that now. Again, that phone number, 202-224-3121. This is important. It's just everybody worries about their rights and all this sort of stuff. Well, you know what? If we don't have a country, we're not going to have rights. It's that simple. And there are elements in the government right now trying to take our country away from us. And like Ben Carson said, courage is one of the things that is surely lacking these days in our society. It's time for the silent majority to have the courage to stand up and quit being so silent. Well, now that several days has passed since the Oregon shooting, things are starting to come out, and they're starting to figure out a few things about the shooter. And interestingly enough, a lot of what's coming out about the shooter is coming not from our government, but from Europe. Europe, well, why would we be hearing so much stuff from Europe? Well, because the guy that did it, his father was English and his mother was from Africa. That's one thing that a lot of the mainstream media is not telling people, is that the guy is half black. Isn't it funny how Obama was raised by his white mother and his white grandparents, yet he's half black. This guy was raised by his black mother, but he's white. That's what happens when you let the media start defining labels. Kind of like the government a lot of times. They say one thing and they do another. Well, pretty much if you read it on the front page of a mainstream paper or hear it on the CBS News or something like that on TV, if you turn it completely around, you're probably actually closer to the truth. Well, anyway, the European Union Times has reported that the Oregon shooter, who killed 9 and wounded 7 others at the Umpqua Community College in Oregon, was listed by the Russian Federal Security Services as one of 87,000 known and or suspected Islamic terrorists, but that the Barack Obama regime refused to utilize the list. You know who else was on that list that Obama and his minions refused to even look at? The Boston bombers. How many more people are going to kill people here in the country that are on a list that the Obama regime refuses to even look at? I mean, shouldn't you at least look at the list just to make sure the people on there are innocent, if nothing else? Well, anyway, the Federal Security Services is reporting today that an American black Islamic terror suspect who yesterday committed an act of mass murder in the state of Oregon has been included on a list of 87,000 known/suspected Islamic terrorists that the Central Intelligence Agency and the International Criminal Police Organization, Interpol, refused last month to accept from the Federation due to it not being politically viable in the present atmosphere. In other words, it wasn't politically correct for the CIA to accept the list. Really politically correct? Shouldn't it be politically correct to protect your country? Well, they're doing a bang-up job so far. According to this report, the black Islamic terrorist who committed this act of terror had previously been identified by electronic intelligence specialists within the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, as being an Islamic State adherent after he attempted to gain passage to Syria via Turkey during the first week of September in 2015. In other words, about a month before he went on a shooting rampage. By the Obama regime refusing to accept this terror list from the Russians, this report continues, he was able to accomplish his terror act when he killed 9 people and wounded 7 others at the college. Man, I tell you what. Well, this was all printed by a Russian publication called Redus. And this publication called Redus is frequently used by Russian intelligence agencies to put information into the public sphere that otherwise would have serious international consequences should the government be found to be behind it. In other words, it's kind of their official leak source. But even if it wasn't true, shouldn't they have looked at it? Well, anyway, the information relating to the Black Islamic terror suspect was leaked, and it was shocking and disturbing in that immediately after the Oregon mass shooting, his internet personal profile was changed from his true identity as a Islamic terror supporter to one of his being a white conservative Republican. Fortunately, they were able to track the time on these changes to prove that that was done after he was killed. So it most likely wasn't him. Oh, man. So, in fact, on his page, he only had 2, quote, quote, friends, because that's the way Facebook works. One of them was Mohammed Ali Ebsani, who is actually banned in Russia and was one of only 2 of his MySpace friends, and who praises the Islamic State and calls for the killing of Jews and glorifies in pictures his rapture of these terrorists. Isn't it funny how we protect banks and politicians, movie stars, casinos, but our most precious assets that we have in this country, our children, go unprotected? Because, folks, putting a little sign out in front of the schools saying gun-free zone is not a protection. We've seen that time and time again when they are killed. Israel has had no classroom shooting since 1974, when after a school shooting by a Palestinian, they armed their teachers. You know, it's so funny that the left gets so upset that why we shouldn't arm our teachers. Yeah, we shouldn't arm our teachers. Meanwhile, President Obama's girls are protected by 11 different gun-toting officers while they go to an elite prep school. So they're not even in a public school. They're in a prep school, which theoretically would be even more protected. And they still have 11 officers around them. But our children and our grandchildren don't deserve to be protected. All our kids are worthy of is a little sign, gun-free zone. Well, of course, we know how well criminals obey signs. Oh, man. Too bad we can't put a sign at the White House saying Muslim-free zone. We'll be back with more after these words. More Cowboy Up in Text.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect fair skies to continue through the nighttime. Comfortable again overnight, lows 58 to 60 with a little more late fog. Now for your Thursday, another dry, warm day, highs into the lower 80s with more clouds and some late showers returning on Friday, highs near 79. Come to Larry's World Famous Buffet in Trenton, open Thursdays through Sundays, featuring some of the finest homestyle cooking around. Larry also offers catering. That's Larry's, just off 559 on Highway 136 West, Trenton. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
The Fed raising rates, China's economy in trouble. Don't let headlines derail your long-term financial strategy. I'm Edward Jones financial advisor Patrick Neal. At Edward Jones, we provide the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Stop by my office next to the Target Shopping Center in Hickson, or call me at 423-870-7894. That's Patrick Neal at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Hey, all you gun enthusiasts! Carter Shooting Supply has just bought a crazy load of guns and is having a crazy huge sale event. Going on now, a huge inventory of Smith & Wesson, Glock, Ruger, and Taurus, all on sale. Taurus guns have a mail-in rebate for $25 to $50. All long guns and all ammo on sale, too, just in time for hunting season. Come in and take advantage of this crazy huge sale event. Going on now at Carter Shooting Supply. Or shop from home by going to CarterShootingSupply.com. Highway 58, Harrison. Check our prices before you buy.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
News Talk Radio is back. That's right. Cowboy Up at Tex, right here at Hot News Talk Radio, can be seen not only on YouTube with our Hot News Cam, you can even get us on Twitter. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us tomorrow if you don't have enough time to finish the show today. Because no matter what happens, Hot News Talk Radio has got you covered. Get the latest news on Twitter. Get traffic reports. We're there. We've even got a sports show now. Woohoo! Yeah, we've got, of course, David Tulis in the mornings with Nooganomics. We've got Digital Drive with Russell from 12 to 1. You've got Eric Judd, Nooga Strong. And, of course, you've always got, like, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity. And, of course, Cowboy Up with Tex. Well, you know, we were talking about the Oregon shooters shooting a while ago. You know, it's kind of funny. We had 3 Muslims that were killed last year in Chapel Hill that were shot not because they were Muslims, but because of basically a neighborhood dispute. It wouldn't have mattered if these people had been Buddhists, if they had been atheists. You know, it didn't matter what their religion was. It was a stupid neighborhood dispute that led to their shooting. But, oh, no one should ever be targeted for their faith, according to Obama. Yet, when 9 Christians were killed in Oregon after being pointedly asked, what is your religion, and were killed because of their faith, you might say they were targeted for their faith, Obama's response, well, we need to take your guns. That means our guns. Oh, Every time something happens, the liberals, the socialists, the only thing they can figure to do is to take somebody's guns, because after all, it was obviously the gun's fault that happened. You know, it's like saying that because somebody in your town drove drunk, we've got to take all those cars because those cars are making people drive drunk. So we have to take everybody's cars, not just the drunk's car. We got to take everybody's cars. That's right. We can't have those cars out on the roads by themselves doing all that stuff. Ugh. Well, you know, they always start coming up with all this stuff about background checks. You know, because so many people are buying guns without background checks. Well, no, not really. You know, there are 30 out of 50 states. You don't need what's called an extended background check. And this is because a small percentage of gun owners actually engage in private gun sales with other gun owners. You know, what they basically do is you know, they'll show each other their, you know, like their concealed weapon permit or their carry permit or whatever you want to call it. And this is enough that they verify to each other that that person is acquiring a firearm legally and is not a violent felon. Well, then, you know, that sounds good. They want to close the loophole so that every single gun sold to anyone requires a background check. There's just one problem with that. Number one, crooks don't buy their guns legally. They steal them or they buy them from somebody else who stole them. You know, they don't get background checks. So making you and me go through a background check is not going to decrease the number of people getting guns to criminals. Meanwhile, the second problem with background checks is, what about people who can't afford a background check? You know, what if having to make a choice between buying a gun to protect their family or possibly feeding their family is an actual concern? Well, here in Tennessee, that's not such a big deal. You know, background checks here, you know, like $10 or something like that. But you start getting into some of these more liberal states, they start jacking the price way up above what it needs to be because they're not trying to just cover the cost of doing the background check. They're using it as a disincentive to buy the guns. You know, in New York, a background check can be $80. $80, that's not a small sum. And as bad as that is, in Maryland, in the state of Maryland, it's $200 for the background check, and you have to get a separate background check for each weapon you buy. Well, what if people can't afford to protect their own families because they have to decide not to buy the gun because they can't afford the background check? Well, at that point, they're doing one of two things. Either they're not buying the gun, in which case their family is at risk, or they're buying the gun illegally, turning an otherwise law-abiding citizen into, you know, a criminal. That's what happens is you know, they do these stupid things that cause good people, good law-abiding people to break a law, thus turning them into criminals that the government can then, you know, jump up and down on. Meanwhile, like I said, the bad guys, the gangbangers, they're not buying their guns from a licensed dealer. In fact, you might have some poor guy that goes out in Maryland, spends $200, gets his gun, and then while they're gone, the house gets broke into, his gun gets stolen. Now he doesn't have the gun, and he's out the $200. Meanwhile, the gangbanger is using the gun. You know, it's like the government goes way out of its way a lot of times to make people have choices where they end up becoming criminals. It's not like we don't have enough intentional criminals. Of course, you know, I was reading one article where they said that there are so many laws. There are so many laws that you can't go a day without breaking a law of some sort. Every single person here in America is a crook. You just haven't been caught yet because the government hasn't decided whether it was worth charging you yet. If you get on their radar for something, well, let's see what we can get on them. That's part of what the NSA is, isn't it? They're just trying to figure out what can they get you for when they want to get you. You know, they say, well, this is the land of the free. Really? The land of the free? What in this land is free anymore? What can you do with your freedom? Can you drive down the street? Well, if the government allows you to, because first off, you have to get your driver's license. You know, back in the Old West, did cowboys have to have a license to ride their horse down Main Street? Did the farmers have to have a license plate on their wagon to be able to go into town to get supplies? Well, that's a government road there. You got to have your driver's license on that there hitched up wagon. What happened? You got to have a permit for this, permit for that. You got to pay taxes for this, taxes for that. You know, we're supposed to have our Bill of Rights, but all of our rights are slowly being eroded into what the government allows us to do. Even our Second Amendment rights. I mean, doesn't the Second Amendment say shall not be infringed? That's pretty plain language. Shall not be infringed. In fact, here, let me find the Bill of Rights. I keep it right here at my desk. The right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people. You notice how that's different than the militia. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let me look here a minute. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 words. The Second Amendment is 27 words long. And the important part is, you know, 4 words. Shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. Why do we need a permit? Why is the government permitting us to do something that the Constitution guarantees us? That's called an overreaching government right there, folks. We buy property, but we don't really own it because at any moment, the government can decide to raise our taxes on it, raise your school taxes, raise your property taxes. They can raise the taxes to whatever they want, and if you can't pay it, they will take your land from you. That's not freedom. You know what I would love? I would love for somebody to call me here at the station at 800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. I want somebody, please somebody, give me a call here at the station and tell me what we have the freedom to do in this country that the government has absolutely no input on whatsoever. I mean, this is a crazy one right here. The federal government doesn't even want you to drink raw milk. Go out in the backyard, get the cow, milk the cow, drink the milk. They deem it unsafe for consumption, so they do everything they can to prevent you from consuming it. Government officials insist that unpasteurized milk poses a health risk because of its susceptibility to contamination. It's the FDA's position that raw milk should never be consumed, agency spokeswoman Tamara Ian Ward said in November of 2011. Well, okay, so the agency can, warn us that certain things might not be healthy for us, but the FDA isn't content to just warn Americans of a slight potential danger. In 1987, the federal government implemented a rule, not a law, a rule, because only Congress can make laws. They made a rule that no person shall cause to be delivered into interstate commerce or shall sell or otherwise distribute or hold for sale any milk or milk product in final package from a direct human consumption unless the product has been pasteurized. So the federal government claims a complete prohibition on the transportation of raw milk across state lines. If you were to carry any unpasteurized dairy from Pennsylvania to Maryland, or say from Georgia here into Chattanooga, say somebody was down in Rossville and they wanted to bring some milk to our farmer's market on Sunday, well, that would be a federal crime, not just a little misdemeanor, not just we're going to fine you. It's a federal crime. Federal crime. We've got to throw you in prison because you had milk. Milk will do a body good, especially when you're in prison. In fact, the federal raw milk prohibition gives us a glimpse of just how much control the feds claim over the lives of all Americans. The Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund tried suing the FDA over the ban, and in its response, the FDA went so far as to claim that it will not only regulate transportation of raw milk across state lines, but can even ban unpasteurized milk within the borders of a state. To institute an intrastate ban on unpasteurized milk as well. The FDA wants complete prohibition of raw milk. Oh, man. I mean, really? Really? Well, yeah, really. Because they've even done things like back in 2011, the FDA carried out an armed raid on a company called Rawsome Foods. They've even raided Amish farms over the last few years over this. Really? An Amish farm? An armed raid by the FDA? You know, we've talked on this show before about how the government has all these different agencies that are armed to the teeth. Well, now I can see how somebody like maybe a game warden might need a gun. I mean, he's talking to other people with guns. Okay, well, I might can see that. But people like the Bureau of Land Management, they were going out there almost with tanks for Clive Bundy. You've got other agencies, all sorts of different agencies carrying guns with hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition to make sure that we don't break a rule, not a law, a rule. Think about this. The FDA, the Federal Department of Agriculture, conducted a armed raid because somebody broke a rule about milk. Milk. Yes, America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. There again, you know, we talk about courage to stand up. If the American public were to stand up when things like this happen, like they did with Clive Bundy. You know, a lot of Americans went out there to Clive Bundy's property and said, "You will not pass And the federal government backed down. You know, states can legalize the production, sale, and consumption of raw milk within their own borders. The feds can't stop that. It's called nullification. And if all 50 states were to allow raw milk, the federal ban wouldn't even matter. You know, just like with marijuana, you know, federal government's, oh, well, you got to ban marijuana. Well, now, I personally am against marijuana. I don't smoke it, and I don't appreciate being around people that do. But that's not the federal government. That's a state's rights issue. And as far as the interstate ban goes, even if the feds did manage to police every single state border and shut down the interstate transportation of raw milk, markets within those states could easily grow to the point that local sales would render the federal ban on interstate commerce rules almost pointless. When people stand up, it's amazing the power they have. And we need to get back to having the courage to stand up for what's right, to stand up to an out-of-control government. One of the ways of doing that is to take our government back. And that's one of the reasons why we have to stand up against illegal immigration. There was an article in Political Magazine over the weekend. It was talking about how illegal immigrants can swing an election vote to the Democrats. And we're not talking about voter fraud with undocumented immigrants actually casting ballots. There's another way they can change the rules, well, change the votes. Because right now, representation in the House is determined by the census under a process known as reapportionment. States which gain population gain seats. States which lose population can lose seats. However, under the 14th Amendment, congressional reapportionment is determined by the whole number of persons in each state. Under the current interpretation, no matter what their legal status is. So, if illegal immigrants are counted in the whole number of persons in each state, that state gets more representation, which can sway the election. At the same time, if illegal immigrants were not counted or were not available to be counted because they were sent home, then they would lose seats. In fact, California, if they had no illegal immigrants in their state at all, they would lose 5 House seats. New York and Washington would also lose 1 each. And all of this kind of adds up because of the Electoral College. You see that when it comes down, there are basically 2 important swing states in particular that would be very, very critical about the reapportionment: North Carolina and Ohio. Well, Ohio's been leaning GOP for just a little bit. In North Carolina's status as a swing state, it mostly stems from Obama carrying it in 2008 by 0.3% of a vote. 0.3 of a vote. So if the illegal immigrants weren't here, it could profoundly change the race. At the same time, with them being here, it can profoundly change the race. And the Democrats know that, and that's why they're trying so hard to get illegal immigrants to come into the states, because they're trying to load the deck. Because they know that even if the illegal immigrants don't vote, they still get brownie points by them being there. But the problem is that by allowing these illegal immigrants in our country, they are breaking the law. course, not that that ever mattered to a Democrat. I mean, remember Harry Reid's comment about lying about in the last presidential race? Well, hey, we won, didn't we? That's all they care about. We won, didn't we? We need for the government, more than anybody else, we need for the government to obey the law, to enforce the law, not just the laws they want, the laws they like. And that's the problem we have with the federal government starting at the White House right now, because it does have consequences. And these aren't unforeseen consequences. These are consequences they are very aware of that affect you and me and all of us in the Tennessee Valley. We'll be back tomorrow with more Cowboy Up with Tex.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Expect fair skies to continue through the nighttime. Comfortable again overnight, lows 58 to 60 with a little more late fog. Now for your Thursday, another dry, warm day, highs into the lower 80s with more clouds and some late showers returning on Friday, highs near 79. Come to Larry's World Famous Buffet in Trenton, open Thursdays through Sundays, featuring some of the finest homestyle cooking around. Larry also offers catering. That's Larry's, just off 559 on Highway 136 West, Trenton. And I'm WDEF News 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoyle.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running